Hello, I'm the Doctor. Welcome to DoctorGeek. Today, we're doing a recap and review of Series 11, Episode 8, The Witchfinders. Attempting to visit the coronation of Elizabeth I in Westminster in 1559, the TARDIS team instead find themselves in Lancashire, near Pendle Hill, in 1612, and there seems to be a street party going on. However, the party is quickly stopped when a man announces that the trial is about to begin, and that Mistress Savage demands their presence. Following the crowds to the river, they find a witch trial taking place, led by the aforementioned Mistress Becca Savage, who tells the crowd that Satan stalks their land, and that they must do what they can to root him out and save the soul of their village. The accused witch is an old woman named Mother Twistin, and she is tied to a large tree branch called the Ducking Stool, which will soon be dropped into the river, as the superstitious people believe that witches float. So if the accused woman drowns, she was innocent, but if she survives, she is a witch and she will be hanged. Despite telling her companions that they mustn't interfere with the events of the past, the Doctor can't help herself as she sees the old woman being dunked in front of her crying granddaughter, and she springs into action to try and save her. But unfortunately, the Doctor is too late to save Mother Twistin, who has already drowned. Mistress Savage, however, is furious at the interruption of her trial, claiming that she has successfully tried 35 witches already, and she orders the Doctor to be punished for her interference. But the Doctor, equally furious, accuses Mistress Savage of murder, and pulling out her psychic paper, the Doctor convinces them that she is the Witchfinder General, which immediately earns her Mistress Savage's respect, and an invitation to her home. As they walk to the estate, Becca Savage tells the Doctor that she is the landowner of the town Bilehurst Craig, which she inherited from her late husband, and she does her best to be a benevolent leader, but in the same breath, she admits to having every horse in the town shot, as she believes that they are creatures of Satan. Graham tells the Doctor that he's toured the witch trial area of Pendle Hill, and he's never heard of Mistress Savage or Bilehurst Craig, so if she's really already killed 36 people, then something strange is definitely going on. They decide the best place to find answers is at Mistress Savage's home, but Yaz decides to split from them to go and find Mother Twistin's granddaughter, to see what she can learn from her about what's been going on. The Doctor, dried off by the fire, asks Mistress Savage how Satan is manifesting himself in her town, and she tells them of blighted crops, bewitched animals, and people plagued with fits of sickness and visions. She goes on to say that the King James Bible tells them that they must not suffer a witch to live, but the Doctor reminds her that the New Testament goes on to say, "Love thy neighbor," and that they can solve their problems without killing anyone, which is what King James would want. However, at that very moment, King James himself walks through the door and contradicts the Doctor by giving his full support to the work of Mistress Savage. Caught off guard, the Doctor does her best to recover, showing King James her psychic paper, but he reads it as Witchfinder General Assistant, believing that no woman could ever be in charge of anything, and he assumes that Graham is the true Witchfinder General, which the Doctor begrudgingly goes along with. King James is determined to bring an end to the scourge of witchcraft that plagues his land, and he tells Mistress Savage that the first order of business should be to go after the granddaughter of Mother Twistin, which pleases her to no end. And to the Doctor's horror, Mistress Savage says that she is determined to save the souls of everyone in her town, even if that means killing them all. Meanwhile, Yaz finds Mother Twistin's granddaughter, Willa, burying her grandmother, but she soon sees a possessed mud tendril crawl out of the ground to attack Willa, and Yaz springs into action, striking the tendril with a shovel until it retreats. Yaz tells Willa that she wants to help, but Willa tells her that no one can help her, and she runs off. Back at the Savage estate, the TARDIS team decides to investigate Becca's bedroom, finding a surprisingly large amount of hankies as well as an axe under the bed, and they are soon joined by Yaz, who frightens them as she arrives. Yaz tells them about the tendril that attacked her and Willa, and the doctor is immediately intrigued, and she asks Yaz to take her to the spot where she was attacked, while she leaves Ryan and Graham behind to make sure Mistress Savage and King James don't kill anyone else. As Ryan and Graham rejoin the king and Mistress Savage, the king delights in showing off his collection of witch hunting artifacts, ranging from torture devices to human body parts, and he gifts a hat to Graham that belonged to his first Witchfinder general, Scotty, who he incidentally had killed. But Graham tells the king he can trust him. Ryan and Graham do their best to stall the king and Mistress Savage, but it's to no avail, as the king is determined to kill every last witch in the village by nightfall. Meanwhile, the doctor and Yaz find Willa, and they ask her to explain what's been going on. She tells them that Becca Savage is her cousin, and that they were both raised by Mother Twistin, but once Becca married, she turned on her own family. The doctor scans Willa with her sonic, but can find nothing strange about her, and despite Willa's apprehension in joining them, she agrees to come with the doctor so that they can stand up to Mistress Savage together. When they all reach the site where Willa was attacked by the tendril, the doctor collects a sample of the mud in a small glass jar, and soon the mud begins to furiously move around, trying to escape its container. Assuming that the mud is some sort of alien matter, the doctor is enthralled by its activity, but her excitement is soon interrupted as the body of Mother Twistin suddenly rises from the ground, as the mud is filling her dead body and using it as a vessel. The doctor questions this new mud monster and determines that it wants the piece of itself that the doctor has captured, which the doctor gives back to it. But suddenly, the bodies of all the other accused witches appear like zombies, also being used by the mud as vessels, and they begin to approach them as well. Back with the king, Graham questions Mistress Savage about her trials, asking her if she's considered that she might be wrong about the witches, but she insists that if the people she tries are good, then they have nothing to fear. And when Graham asks her if she's a good person, she tells him that her conscience is clear. At the same time, Ryan is talking to King James, asking him why he doesn't trust anyone, and the king tells Ryan the long and sad story of his life. However, when Ryan tries to convince the king to give up his witch hunt and return to London for his safety, he tells him that God will keep him safe, as long as he does his work. Soon after, they hear a scream, and they follow it to find the mud creatures closing in on the doctor, Yaz, and Willa. The doctor tells the king that she has things under control, but not trusting her, he sends his soldier Alfonso to shoot the creatures, but he is easily killed by them and only succeeds in making them angry. They all make their retreat, but realizing that the creatures aren't following them, Graham, Yaz, and Ryan decide to go back to see what they are up to, wanting to make sure that they don't harm anyone else. The doctor, meanwhile, tries to determine the mud creature's motive, and she fixates on the coincidence of these witch trials happening on the same day as an alien invasion, determining that the two things must be related, and she questions Mistress Savage on if she knows what's truly happening in Bilehurst Craig. Mistress Savage, however, responds to the inquiry by accusing the doctor of being a witch herself, noting that her sonic screwdriver appears to be a magic wand, and soon King James as well believes the accusations, and the two witch hunters pressure Willa to condemn the doctor as well, which she eventually does under duress. And with Willa's confirmation, King James orders the doctor to be arrested, and he later interrogates her about her sonic device and her supposed magic. But the doctor turns the interrogation against him, asking him about his mother, and using her knowledge of his life to make him question the decisions that he's been making. It's actually a very good speech, and it's a highlight of the 13th Doctor so far. But unfortunately, the Doctor's speech isn't good enough, and he orders the guards to summon the villagers for another witch trial. Meanwhile, the Doctor's companions find the mud creatures, and they follow them to Mistress Savage's house, where the mud Mother Twistin grabs the axe from under Becca's bed. At the trial, the Doctor again confronts Mistress Savage, asking her what she's trying to hide with all of these trials, but she gets nowhere. However, As Becca makes contact with the ducking stool, it crackles with energy, reacting to her touch. And the doctor continues to question Becca, who tells the doctor that after she deals with her, she will go after the doctor's friends. And the doctor sees mud dripping from Mistress Savage's eyes. As Graham, Ryan, and Yaz hear bells coming from the river, they realize that another trial must be taking place, and correctly assuming that it's the doctor, they rush to her aid, arriving just as she is dunked into the river. The companions plead with King James to give the order to raise the doctor, and he eventually agrees, but they are all shocked to see that the doctor has managed to escape, and she appears from out of the river moments later, crediting her escape to a weekend spent with Houdini. The doctor again tells Mistress Savage to tell her the truth, and soon the mud creatures arrive, coming after Becca with the axe. As Becca tells them to stop, strangely, they obey her, and the doctor realizes that they are not here to kill her, but to join her, as the mud has already found its way inside Becca. It turns out that Becca cut down the tree from which the ducking stool is made of, the mightiest tree on Pendle Hill, because it was spoiling her view. However, what she didn't know was that Pendle Hill was actually a prison for an alien army, and the tree was the lock. And when she broke it, one of the creatures was able to escape and enter her body. As Mistress Savage felt the creature growing inside of her, she assumed it to be the devil, and she tried to do the Lord's work by persecuting the witches in an attempt to prevent herself from being taken over by Satan. Now accusing Becca of being a witch, King James switches sides once again, and as Mistress Savage admits to being the true witch, she is finally taken over by the creature inside of her, the Morax Queen. The Queen tells the doctor that the Morax army was imprisoned on Earth for war crimes, but now they will rise again, and after they free their king and allow him to inhabit the body of King James, they will go about taking over the entire planet. With that, the Morax use their power to knock everyone out, and when they wake up, King James is gone, and the doctor realizes that the tree on Pendle Hill was actually ancient alien technology used to lock the Morax here, which explains why it reacted to the Morax inside of Becca when she touched it. And Willa tells them that Bilehurst Craig translates to sacred tree on a hill. Knowing that the wood from the tree will be toxic to the Morax, the doctor breaks off pieces to use as torches, and she gives them to her companions. Graham gives the doctor the Witchfinder General's hat, which she looks amazing in, by the way, and the doctor tells her companions that the plan is to fix the lock and re-trap the Morax while they attempt to save the king. As they prepare to leave, Willa joins them as well, and she offers to lead the way up the hill. Back at the tree, the Morax Queen uses the axe to break the lock even more, letting her king out to possess King James. But the doctor and friends arrive just in time, and they force the king back with their torches. However, as the Morax Queen fearlessly confronts them, the doctor sneaks back to the tree and re-energizes the lock, sucking all of the Morax out of the dead bodies that they were inhabiting and back into Pendle Hill. Still, the Morax Queen refuses to go back, but King James decides to put an end to her himself, and against the doctor's wishes, he burns her with a torch, in one of my favorite moments from the episode. However, the doctor is less than pleased, and she is furious with him for killing Mistress Savage. The next day, as they prepare to leave, the doctor is still not speaking to King James, but he tells her that he will never speak of what happened here, and that even the name of the town will be erased from the records. Willa tells them that she will take up her grandmother's role as a healer, and King James suggestively offers Ryan the opportunity to return to London with him as his protector, which Ryan politely declines. As they enter the TARDIS, the Doctor tells King James that she's about to prove that any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. And with that, the TARDIS takes off, leaving behind an amused Willa and a very confused King James. And now, before my review, here were the best lines from the Witchfinders.
Where are we? Apple bobbing! I love apple bobbing!
Come to vanquish the scourge of witchcraft. A woman could never be the general.
Silly me.
Cunning ruse, using your innate aptitude for nosiness and gossip.
Well, to be fair to King James, you are snooping.
I'm investigating.
Is Becca seriously paranoid, man?
Here you are.
Yes, perhaps later.
Whoa! I am no longer disappointed. Not to kill her, but to fill her. Ooh, check out my rhymes. Poetry under pressure. Hi, sire! I know it looks bad, but don't worry, I'm all over it.
Yes.
What? No, hold on a sec.
You are no...
Honestly, if I was still a bloke, I could get on with the job and not have to waste time defending myself. If I was Satan's agent, do you seriously think a bit of rope would stop me? I'll say a bit. Quite a lot. You want to know the secrets of existence? Start with the mysteries of the heart. I just couldn't hold in my breath and getting out of chains. Thanks to a very wet weekend with Houdini. Oh, mate, seriously, not witches, bodies possessed by alien mud. Come on, hi, team. Gang. Fam. Haven't had a hangover like this since the Milk Wars at Keston 5.
What, woman? She was a witch. She confessed.
Okay, so this episode had a lot of great things going for it, and I definitely think it's in the better half of the episodes for this series. The Witchfinders gave us the first instance of the Doctor's authority being questioned simply because she was a woman, and that dynamic was really fun to delve into, as we all assumed it would be at least a small part of her character going forward. And it makes me wonder how often during Jodie's run they will decide to re-dip into this dynamic of her character. Jodie actually had a really standout episode this week, and got another great speech towards the end of the episode like she did last week in Kerblam. Although I thought this one was much better, as she was tied up and trying to reason with King James. And I've seen that line that she says about solving the mystery of the heart a million times since the episode premiered. So this could very well be one of Jodie's defining moments as the Doctor. But unfortunately, yet again, her speech does nothing to convince who she's trying to convince. And I really wish they would just give her a win on one of these speeches. Adding to the emotional impact of that speech was the music in this episode, as composer Sagan Akinola really upped his game this week with the score, which I thought perfectly captured the mood of the story. His scores this year have been a big change from Murray Gold's, and I'm sad to say that most weeks I don't even really notice the music much because it seems to devolve into ominous tones. But the string-heavy score of this week was a welcome change, and I hope he sticks with more instrumental styles going forward. This episode was the first Doctor Who script written by Joy Wilkinson, and she's already coming back next week for the episode It Takes You Away. So we'll really get a good feel for her and her style after 2 episodes in a row. But so far, I have to say that I really like her, as I felt like she was able to balance the enemies of this week really well with the overall story, and much better than a lot of writers have managed to do this year, although that's mainly down to Chris Chibnall. While the Morax this week were by no means perfect enemies, as we will get into their flaws in a moment, they did a good job of moving the plot along, and I believe that they are a worthy addition into the pantheon of Doctor Who villains. The episode was directed by Sally Aprahamian, who also directed Arachnids in the UK, and where that episode was confined to only 3 or 4 sets indoors, making it feel very claustrophobic, this episode, taking place mainly outdoors, had a much nicer feel to it, and I really liked the pacing of the episode far more than that of Arachnids. The stars of the episode this week were really the guest stars, as all 3 of them did a really fantastic job. Siobhan Fanarin as Becca Savage was definitely one of the best antagonists we've gotten all year, as she was the true villain of this episode, with her murder rampage of the town, and she's able to convey the self-righteousness of her character really well. She's a character that you love to hate, and once she becomes the Morax Queen, she really becomes truly menacing. It's honestly a shame that they had to include the Morax King in the story, because honestly, she was already a great final boss to end the episode with, and I thought that it diminished from her overall impact by shifting the focus of the story to this unseen king in the last 5 minutes of the episode. Tilly Steele as Willa was also great, and I really liked her subtle facial expressions throughout the episode as she experienced a wide range of emotions. As a character, she had the greatest arc in this story, and had the most development by far, so I enjoyed watching her progress through the episode. But of course, the best part of the episode by far is who everyone has been talking about. Alan Cumming as King James is the best thing to come out of Series 11 outside of the Doctor. His portrayal of the famous king is hilarious but believable, and he looks exactly like him on top of that. His flirting with Ryan throughout the episode was one of the funniest parts of the entire story, and it's really a shame that Tosin Cole isn't better at improv, or those scenes could have been even better. I think the chances of Alan Cumming returning to this role next season are pretty high, because the fans truly loved him, and there's still so much that you could do with his character, especially considering how he interacts with the 13th Doctor. So I'm keeping my fingers crossed for that in the future. But I will say that I'm glad Alan Cumming didn't take the role of the 13th Doctor, of which he was rumored to have been offered. Because while I did like him in this episode, he may have gotten a little tiring as the Doctor. Plus, I love Peter Capaldi too much to let him go. As for what I didn't like, the companions this week didn't really have too much to do, which has been a recurring feature of this series. And honestly, it's just the result of having too many characters and not enough time. Back in the classic era of Doctor Who, the stories were usually, at a minimum, 4 24-minute episodes long, meaning a story, when complete, was at least about an hour and a half. This meant that you could give a lot more time and development to each companion, but by trying to have 3 companions in the modern era, especially with all of these guest stars as well, it's inevitable to feel like the companions get left behind. And this week, they were really doing little else than following the Doctor around, or going about on silly missions of following other people around. Graham does have some good lines as usual, and him in that hat is funny, though he doesn't look nearly as good in it as Jodie does, but he doesn't really do anything. And Ryan is pretty much the same, with him really only being used as a prop for King James to flirt with. However, the winner of the least used companion this week is definitely Yaz, as there are literally scenes where you forget she's even there because she has absolutely no lines. It's almost like the writer didn't even know that there would be 3 companions and forgot to write her into the story completely. Even when she goes to see Willa at the beginning of the episode, all she does is attack the tendril with a shovel and then run back to the Doctor. After that, she's basically invisible. Now, as for the Morax, I thought they were menacing enough, but the whole concept of the tree being a lock was really kind of stupid, and the explanation of the lock being billions of years old didn't excuse the fact that it was a tree that could easily be cut down by a random selfish woman. Not to mention the fact that Pendle Hill probably hasn't been around for billions of years. To me, that was the weakest part of the whole story. And it's made even worse by the fact that all the Doctor has to do is touch the tree stump at the end, and not even very sneakily, she literally just walks up to it, and then it's game over for the Morax. Just a really anticlimactic way to end the battle. So the episode kind of lets us down in the 3rd act. Also, as I said before, the Queen of the Morax was already a pretty great villain, especially considering that she was Becca Savage, who we already did not like. So there was really no reason to introduce the King of the Morax yet to be unleashed, as it's not like he would have had any special powers that the Queen of the Morax didn't already have. So that just seemed a bit unnecessary to me, and as I said, took away from the true villain of the episode. As far as little gripes go, I did find it a bit odd that the Doctor didn't even attempt to do mouth-to-mouth to save Mother Twiston from drowning after she pulled her out of the water, as that's kind of an essential part of saving a drowning victim, which the Doctor surely knows, and she probably could have been resuscitated as she wasn't in the water for that long. But that's not going to ruin my enjoyment of the episode. Overall, I thought this was a good, middle-of-the-road story, and definitely one of the bright spots of Series 11. So, for a nice story in an interesting time period that featured one of the more compelling villains of Series 11, I give the Witchfinders 7 King James out of 10. So, that was my recap and review for Series 11, Episode 8. Don't forget to like and subscribe for new videos every week, and ring the bell so you don't miss a thing. Let me know in the comments what your favorite part of the episode was, and leave me some ideas for videos that you'd like me to make in the future. As always, thank you for being my companions on this journey today. I'm the Doctor. Bye for now.